Hi, I'm Dr. David Purvis. Today I'm talking about the 5 principles of lifestyle design. Now, when I think of lifestyle design, I think about having the life that you want, and often that involves eradicating mental health problems that prevent you from having the life that you want. So I'm making this video at the beginning of the COP26 environmental conference in Glasgow, and I'm not an environmentalist. I try to do my bit, and I wish them well in their endeavour, and I hope it works. I hope it works out really, because in a sense they're trying to save the planet for future generations. I'm a psychologist, and I'm a campaigner for mental health, and so I'm thinking of it like this, right? Why don't we save ourselves because we matter? So future generations, yeah, let's look after them, but why don't we look after ourselves? And specifically, if you struggle with a mental health problem, why don't we find ways for you to have a better experience? And that's what I'm calling lifestyle design. Let's think about the things that prevent us from having a good experience, take them out, and add more things that allow us to have a better experience. Because many of the limitations that we feel that we have are illusory. They don't really exist. And limitations that we do feel we have are probably in here. So, lifestyle design. The first principle of lifestyle design, I think, is this: don't accept the status quo. And by the status quo, I mean really be critical about the stories that you have been told about mental health problems or the mental health problems that you have. Now, in particular, I'm thinking about outsourcing your mental health to an antidepressant, for instance. So, if you were cared about your physical health, okay, you might say, yeah, okay, I understand the principle of eating a healthy diet. If you want to be fitter, you go, yeah, I understand the principle of doing exercise so that I can be fitter and look after my body. With mental health, do we actually take responsibility for our mental health, or do we outsource it to something like an antidepressant? Now, the reason I mention antidepressants in particular, because we outsource it to a number of different things, is that I have this image in my mind, right, of Wembley Stadium, the football stadium in London. It holds 90,000 people. If you can imagine Wembley Stadium full of 90,000 people, 15,000 of those will be on an antidepressant. They'll have an antidepressant prescription. Now, I think that is a terrible thing. I think that's a terrible indictment of the status quo, of the way that we are managing mental health, right? Being on an antidepressant is not a treatment for anxiety or depression. Now, you've probably been told that it is a treatment. It's not a treatment for anxiety and depression. It's a management strategy. All an antidepressant does is to make it more bearable to manage the symptoms of anxiety and depression. It doesn't prevent the problem. And that's why a lot of times people think of, or medical professionals think of depression as a recurring problem. Yeah, because you're not actually dealing with a problem. You're medicating some of the worst aspects of the symptoms. Now, the other reason that I think that we need to challenge the status quo is because it's going in the wrong direction. Since 2000, the use of prescriptions for antidepressants has gone up by 170%. With generally about 16% of the UK population on an antidepressant, and 8% of those on it for more than 2 years. And I have had many clients over years of clinical practice that have been on them for 20 years plus. And sometimes people will never get off them. Now, you've probably been told the story that there's a serotonin imbalance in your brain. That's why you're depressed or anxious. And an antidepressant rectifies that serotonin imbalance, and that's how it works, right? That's not true. There is no serotonin imbalance in your brain. However, when you take an antidepressant, you create an imbalance. So the myth, the story that you've been told just isn't true, right? But it's in the status quo. It's just out there. I can't believe the number of people who've told me, my doctor says I've got a serotonin imbalance, so I need to take this. No, you don't. When you take an antidepressant, you create a serotonergic imbalance, which means that it can be very difficult to get off antidepressants. You've probably been told, yeah, not too bad, a couple of weeks, you'll be fine, right? No, some people never get off antidepressants. They're hard to get off. Now, you don't outsource your physical health, right? You don't go, I want to be fit. Would you do the exercise for me, please? I want to eat a healthy diet. Will you eat the healthy diet for me? Don't outsource your mental health, because no one cares about your mental health more than you do. So the status quo basically says, outsource your mental health, take an antidepressant, really do very little to look after yourself. Don't take ownership over it. We'll take ownership of it for you. That does not work very well at all. The next principle of lifestyle design is this, and this might not make sense to everybody, right? You matter. I can't tell you the number of people over my years of clinical practice who genuinely feel that they don't matter. I would say to someone, look, who's the most important person in your life? Parents, children, partner, dog, neighbours, best friends, me. Okay, so if you're way down the list of who's the most important person in your life, then you're always setting yourself up to be more or less some form of slave, really, because everyone else's needs are in front of your needs. That is incompatible with lifestyle design. It's incompatible with having the life that you want, because it means that everyone else's needs are in front of yours. So my general motto is this, right? You're a star in your own movie, but you're an extra to everybody else. If you make everyone else a star in your movie and you make yourself an extra, everyone will treat you as an extra, as a bit player, as someone whose needs are not important, which means that it's very hard to get your needs, your wants, your desires satisfied. So you're always feeling less than. You matter. You have to start working towards believing that you matter, because if you feel that you don't matter, well, everyone else is going to use you to a greater or lesser extent. The third principle of lifestyle design, and this is really important with respect to mental health problems, is this: thoughts are just thoughts. Now, everyone's different. Some people believe that thoughts are just thoughts. Other people believe that thoughts are important things that tell them something fundamental about themselves. So, for instance, if you struggle with OCD, you do not believe that thoughts are just thoughts. You believe that thoughts are incredibly important things that need to be controlled, and if they're not controlled, they can get out of hand, and they tell you something about you that's reprehensible or morally indefensible. So thoughts are really important things that have to be managed. Okay, but thoughts are still just thoughts. Beliefs are still just beliefs, and it doesn't make them true. So I know this is like a bit daft, right? But just because you believe something doesn't make it true. I have met many hundreds of people in clinical practice, and every single one of those held beliefs about themselves that are not true. Obviously not true, and I prove to them that they're not true, right? I'm a failure, I'm an imposter, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, nobody loves me, I don't look right. None of these things are true. They're just the common beliefs that we develop as we go through life, and we hold on to those beliefs because they're horrible, right? I feel like a failure. Yeah, I'm a failure. No, you're not a failure. You know, you could be, governor of the World Bank and still feel like a failure. It's just a feeling. So thoughts are just thoughts. They don't necessarily mean anything, but feelings are just feelings. They don't necessarily correspond to reality. They're just feelings. But when we identify with these things, then we give them more power over us. So if you go through the whole of your life believing you're a failure, no matter how successful you are, that is incompatible with having a lifestyle that you want, right? You might have things that you want, but the experience is always feels risky. It always feels like you're going to lose everything, and it always makes you stressed and feel like you're on edge. So the principle is, look, thoughts are just thoughts, beliefs are just beliefs, feelings are just feelings. These things come through our consciousness all of the time. And when we recognize that that's happening, we don't then have to jump onto and believe and buy into self-defeating negative beliefs that we might have about ourselves. The fourth principle of lifestyle design is this: there are causes and consequences. There are cause and effect. There are processes and outcomes. There are things which happen that cause other things to happen. When you struggle with a mental health problem, you always get captured by the outcome, by the consequence, by the effect. And so, I feel like I'm really anxious, or I'm really depressed. I feel like I'm going to have a panic attack, right? These are important, these are attention-grabbing phenomena. but they capture all our attention. And so we get lost in this, I feel terrible, I feel awful, my body's tingling like I've got electricity going through, I'm getting tunnel vision, my breathing's going strange, I'm funny, I'm going to have a panic attack. Okay, fine, right. None of that is fundamentally important, because that's a consequence, it's an outcome. What we have to focus our attention on if we're interested in having a life that we want is the process that creates it. Because you can focus the whole of your life on your symptoms and they won't change, which will then take you down the path of managing the symptoms with an antidepressant. But until you focus on the process that creates them, nothing can change, because the process is constantly creating the consequences, the outcomes, the symptoms. The secret of successful treatment for mental health problems actually is to change the process. You change the process, you stop having the symptoms. As an example, if you're struggling with anxiety, it is always true that your brain, for some reason or another, that can be figured out, is overestimating the threat that you're under. You are not under a threat. Your brain thinks that you're under a threat, and so it creates the physiology of fear, which is basically anxiety. Anxiety is fear without a reason to be fear. It's a trick that your brain is playing on you. With panic, it feels like you're going to be annihilated. Your brain releases adrenaline and cortisol to prepare your body to fight, to flee, to do something fundamental, to save your life. You might be in bed. There's no threat. It's a trick your brain's playing on you. If you're depressed, your brain is making you believe, back to beliefs, that you're not good enough in some way, or that you've failed, or somehow there's something defective about you. So your brain is basically underestimating your strengths and your resources, and it's overestimating your faults and failings. This has been demonstrated in research numerous times, okay? But if you believe what you feel, then that's going to take you down the path of depression. So we've always got to think about, okay, this is how I feel, but what's causing it? What's creating it? What's the process that I need to focus my attention on? When you focus on the process, it's not that hard to change the process. The symptoms go away. The consequences, the outcomes, they're changed because of the experience you've had. And they might say, well, okay, yeah, but I've been anxious for years, I've been depressed for years. Sure, you are where you are because of the choices that you've made on your journey. Start to make some different choices and you'll have a different experience. You have to have a different experience, because if you make different choices, you're on a different path. It's what I call a 2mm shift. You do something a bit different, that changes the trajectory you take through life. You always end up in a different place. The trick with lifestyle design is to make some changes that you want to have, to a direction that you want to go in, to achieve something that you want to achieve. And why not? Because to make a conscious choice to achieve something that you want to achieve is no harder or no easier than making an unconscious choice to go somewhere that you don't want to go. Right? It's just exercising a little bit of choice. And the final principle of lifestyle design that I want to talk about today is to figure out what you want. Now, I know it's difficult sometimes to figure out what you want, but figure out what you don't want and decide to do something about that. So today I've talked about mental health problems, but I could talk about creativity, I could talk about satisfying employment, I could talk about good relationships, I could talk about good relationships with your kids, I could talk about any aspect of life, because it's all lifestyle design. What we fail to do a lot of times is to take control over the path of our lifestyle, so that we end up often, particularly with the mental health problem, we go, well, how did I get here? I didn't expect this. So for instance, if you struggle with OCD, you have been journeying towards OCD for some period of time, and it could be years. Yeah, I've always been anxious. I've always been a worrier. Yeah, well, I had a little bit of OCD stuff at school, but it went away. Now I have the problem full blown. Okay, you've journeyed towards that problem. So decide what you want, or decide what you don't want, and do something about it. With respect to mental health problems, the principles that I've outlined get you started and being able to take control of your mental health. You don't need to worry. You don't need to be anxious. You don't need to be depressed. You don't need to have OCD. You don't need to have body dysmorphic disorder. You don't need to have stress. Fundamentally, you don't really need to have any of these things, but you have journeyed towards them, and so you have got them. If you don't want to have them, decide that you don't want to have them and journey away from them. I say to people, and I believe this to be true actually, people say, well, I've got anxiety, depression, or whatever. I say, you don't actually have a mental health problem. You believe that you do, you feel that you do, and you behave as if you do. But you don't actually. Your mental health problem is a consequence of the things that you're doing today. And if you do these things today, you're practicing doing them tomorrow. But suppose we do something different today. Tomorrow will be different. And I often talk about worry, because worry is quite an easy thing to get rid of, right? I've always been a worrier. Okay, do you want to be a worrier? No, okay. Let's practice, and it only takes normally 2 or 3 weeks. Let's practice not worrying. Let's learn not to worry. Okay. And people learn not to worry and they go, I don't worry. Yeah, brilliant. I forgot to worry. You forgot to have a problem. And that's what we're after when I'm working with mental health problems. You forget to have a problem, because when you turn the process down, it doesn't create the symptoms. Therefore, you forget to have the symptoms, and therefore you forget to have a problem, which is why I say you probably don't have a mental health problem. I mean, for the majority of people, I mean, some things are a little bit more genetic or a little bit more neuropsychological or entrenched, but as a general principle, you don't have a mental health problem. You believe you do, you feel you do, and you act as if you do. So, with lifestyle design, I propose we take some control over our lifestyle, and we actually try to figure out what we want, what we don't want, apply the principles, and have a great journey. Enjoy the experience. And so, I hope COP26 figures out the future, because it's a future-based thing, right? Managing the climate and getting carbon dioxide down. Many of us will not be here by the time they get to that, net zero or whatever you like. But why not have a better life now? Why not design our life now so that we have a good experience for the remainder of the time that we have? Because the alternative would be to not have a good experience. And I think, why not have a good experience? It makes sense to me. So I hope you found this interesting. Please reach out to me, leave comments, subscribe. I think that accepting the status quo makes it feel like it's just what it is, right? It's just reality. It's not. And I hope I've demonstrated to you these 5 principles that much of what we accept when we just accept having a mental health problem or whatever is unnecessary. We don't need to be where we are. We could actually be revolutionaries. We could change our life and have a great time. So thanks for listening, and I appreciate the time you've invested in watching this video. And I hope that the principle of lifestyle design just tweaks something in you so that we can get a bit more creative and a little bit more brave to have the kind of life that we want.